The main battle tank is one of the most formidable builds in the game. It may not be the fastest or the cheapest thing on the battlefield, but pound for pound, it is top 5 for raw firepower and defense. Its iconic feature, a stabilized main gun that one-shots almost anything it can see, makes it look like a permanent S-tier pick. And yet, scroll any defense feed right now, and the verdict looks unanimous. The tank is dead, power crept into the ground by cheap drones. That is the debate half the internet thinks it already won. Hold that thought, because the tank has some less obvious strengths and weaknesses that completely change the equation. Today, we're going over every pro and con and settling it. Is the main battle tank still overpowered, or has the meta finally left it behind? Let's start with the loadout, and of course that means the main gun. A 120mm smoothbore firing a depleted uranium dart is one of the strongest single attacks in the entire game. It has a flat trajectory, and with a modern fire control suite and thermal optics, it lands first shot hits on a moving target past 2 kilometers in the dark, while itself moving. That's the tank's whole identity. It sees you through smoke and darkness before you see it, and it deletes you before you can close the distance. A trained crew cycles that gun in a handful of seconds, so it is not a one-and-done attack either. Factor in a road speed north of 40 miles an hour on more than 60 tons of steel, and careless players badly underestimate how fast that giant gun repositions. Now, the classic weakness of a build like this, a heavy hitter with a big skull-mounted weapon, is that once something gets inside your range, you're out of options. That is not the case here, because the tank has the best frontal defense stats in its entire weight class. The M1 Abrams tips the scales at around 73 tons, most of it composite armor layered across the frontal arc, and head-on, it is functionally immune to older anti-tank rounds. Players bolt on even more, reactive armor blocks that detonate outward to blunt a shaped charge, and improvised cope cages welded over the roof. For 50 years, this frontal armor is why the tank sat at the very top of the food chain, and nothing its own size could reliably kill it from the front. It is not invincible. Nothing in this game is bulletproof forever, but it has far more room for error than any other build. And at over $10 million a copy, it had better. But the tank has real weaknesses, and the first is eyesight. A buttoned-up crew sees the world through vision blocks and optics, a wide field of view traded against genuine awareness of what is happening right next to the hull. Up close, the tank is half blind, and it cannot reliably tell a threat from background clutter. So it gets jumpy, it gets flanked, and stealth builds. A dismounted infantryman with a launcher, a buried mine team, stay concealed until they choose to strike. Intelligence builds exploit it even harder. Bait the tank forward, kite it into a tree line, spring an ambush, and cut it off from its team. A blind bruiser is a bruiser you can farm, which is exactly why the tank cannot solo the map. It needs a party. Dismounted infantry are the tank's third eye, screening the flanks, clearing the buildings it can't see into, and spotting the launcher team before it fires. And modern builds bolt on an active protection system like Trophy, developed by Raphael and fielded by Leonardo DRS, which uses radar to detect an incoming missile or rocket-propelled grenade and fires an interceptor to kill it in flight, milliseconds before impact. Trophy turns a lot of one-shot kills into wasted shots. A tank running with infantry and an active protection system is a completely different, far stronger build from the tank that rolls in alone. Because alone, the second weakness bites hard. All that armor is stacked up front. The sides, the rear, the roof, and the engine deck are thin, and every predator in the modern meta has learned to attack from exactly those angles. A surrounded tank has no equivalent of a herbivore's kick. It just eats hits. It was never built to eat. And it has a weak point on its hindquarters too. Catch the rear or the top, and you inflict a catastrophic kill debuff, an ammo cook-off that even 73 tons can't shrug off. Normally, that is your teammate's job to guard, Sent in solo, there is simply no one watching the back. There's variation inside the faction too. Want to max raw protection, optics, and firepower? You play the Western Brawler, the Abrams, or the Leopard 2, heavily armored and superbly gun-laid, but a thirsty logistics hog that drinks fuel and needs a tale of mechanics behind it. Prefer mobility and a smaller silhouette? You play the Eastern build like the T90, lighter, cheaper, faster to field on an autoloader, at the cost of a carousel of ammunition, sitting under the turret that, if the armor is breached, ends the match instantly. Either way, you are fielding the most expensive, most logistics-hungry unit on the map, and losing one is a genuine roster hit, not a respawn. You shrug off. Now the individual matchups. First, the rocket-propelled grenade and the old wire-guided missile. Against the frontal arc, these are the big cats of the battlefield, dangerous on paper, but their claws simply can't punch through the composite. Head-on, a modern tank has almost nothing to fear from them, and closing to fire only puts them in range of the gun. So far, so overpowered. But the next matchup is where it falls apart. The top attack missile, the javelin, the loitering munition. This is the elephant. It outranges the tank, it ignores the thick frontal armor entirely, and drops straight onto the thin roof, and a two-man team can carry it in a backpack. This is the one genuinely losing matchup, and it's the reason people started calling the tank dead. Then, the other main battle tank. Tank versus tank is the hippo fight. Near identical stats, decided by who sees who first, who's dug in, and who flinches. Whoever has the better thermals and fires first usually wins. The most even matchup on the board, and it can go either way. And finally, the first-person view drone, the hyenas. One is almost nothing, but they hunt in packs. They cost a few $100s each, and they chase the rear and the roof, that same weak point, until something gives. A swarm trading $300 quadcopters for a $10 million kill is the most brutal cost-efficiency ratio in the current meta, and it is exactly why the panic spread. It's still rare for a coordinated swarm to kill a fully supported tank. It happens constantly to an abandoned one, and that gap between the two is the whole story. So here's the pattern that ties it all together. In 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Egyptian infantry with Soviet Sagar missiles shredded Israeli tank formations in the opening days, and the internet of its era declared the tank obsolete. It wasn't. The tanks that burned were the ones sent in alone, without infantry or artillery to suppress the missile crews. Once the Israelis went back to combined arms, the tank was fine. We are watching the exact same balance patch run again in Ukraine, where roughly half the Abrams sent to the front were lost, almost all of them unsupported, out ahead of their infantry, inside a drone swarm. The headline was that drones killed the tank. The fine print was that nobody was covering it. Read that carefully, because the consensus gets it wrong. The tank is not dead. It got knocked off the uncontested S-tier throne it held for 50 years, and it got knocked down a peg, but the build that actually dies is the solo glass cannon, the bruiser sent in without a party. It still owns the stats that decide a straight fight: firepower, frontal armor, and first shot accuracy. Played correctly, inside combined arms, with infantry screening the flanks, and an active protection system swatting the missiles, it is still the hardest single hitter on the field. Verdict: a tier and S tier the moment it stops trying to solo the map. Awareness is the stat that decides whether this build lives or dies, on the battlefield and on this channel. So level yours up and subscribe, because every conflict is just another balance patch, and we break down the next one the moment it drops. The tank was never the problem, sending it in alone was.